This is a full story. Kitten wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. At the class reunion, Rocky and I lost a game. The punishment was pretend to be a couple and date for 7 days. That day happened to be exactly a year since we broke up. Rocky, afraid I'd cling to him, lazily reminded me, "It's just a game. Taking it seriously would be pointless." I nodded in agreement. Under the rules, we had to hold hands and hug like real lovers. On the 6th night, Rocky got drunk and buried his head in my neck. I agreed to get back together. "Isn't that what you've always wanted?" He seemed to have forgotten. The last time I asked to reconcile was 10 months ago. That day, he had reluctantly agreed to meet me to defend a junior. His expression showed no effort to hide his impatience. "Stop pursuing her for copying your work. I promised not to break up with you. Is that enough?" The 1-week couple challenge was proposed by Rocky's brother. He's also a rich kid. After Rocky and I tacitly agreed, he changed his mind. "Hey, a week is too short. You can't develop feelings in that time. How about half a month? I'll double the prize to 200,000. The prize money doubled. I sat in the corner of the booth, my hands resting on my knees, slightly curling up. I quickly nodded. "I can do that." The rich kid smiled. "Great, then. Why do you have so much to say?" Rocky interrupted him, his eyes downcast, not looking at anyone. "1 week, or let's call it off." The rich kid rolled his eyes at him, cursing his bad temper. I felt a bit disappointed but still compromised. 1 week is fine. Rocky didn't stop. He opened the box door and walked out. The girl next to me elbowed me. "Rocky left. Aren't you going?" I suddenly realized the 1-week couple challenge had begun. I hurried to catch up with Rocky. Even a piece of his watch was worth more than this prize money. No one knew why he agreed to this challenge. On the way back to school, Rocky spoke the first words to me today. "Haley." I walked beside him and looked up at his voice. Rocky's gaze was indifferent as he looked ahead. "It's just a game for a week. Taking it seriously would be pointless." I was thinking about the prize money and nodded perfunctorily. "It won't be." Rocky finally turned his head to look at me. "Promise you won't cling to me anymore?" I paused, memories of our messy past flooding back. I couldn't help but smile helplessly. I said seriously to Rocky, "I promise. After a week, we'll go back to being strangers. I won't disturb you, I swear." Rocky's shoulders, which had been tense, relaxed a bit. We had just arrived at the girls' dormitory. Rocky stopped. His expression softened. "Then come add me on Facebook, girlfriend? I have something to do. You go back to the dorm. I'll message you later." I had no objection. One of the challenge requirements was that both parties had to develop feelings both online and offline. At the end of the challenge, we had to reveal chat logs to prove we weren't being perfunctory. After all, the prize money wasn't that easy to win. After 10 months, I re-added Rocky on Facebook. I still vividly remembered when he deleted me for the first time. That was the 7th day after Rocky abruptly broke up with me. The chat interface was almost completely covered by my green messages. He finally replied. Through the screen, I could feel his impatience. "Are you done?" He was so calm, making me feel like I was going crazy. The linear algebra teacher was excitedly speaking into the mic, but I couldn't hear a word. Tears hit the screen, and I hurried to wipe them away and typed, "I just want to know why you broke up. Is that so hard? Rocky, I just don't want to date anymore." Tears fell again. I sniffed and refused to give up, no matter how sad I was. "Are you still angry about the last time I threw a fit? I won't do that again, okay? Rocky, I'm sorry. Don't break up with me. I really like you." I couldn't send the last sentence. Rocky ran out of patience and directly blocked me. I stared blankly at the red exclamation mark. My heart felt like it was being squeezed, aching, and struggling to breathe. Almost as soon as the class bell rang, I grabbed my book and ran out of the classroom. I rushed to the floor where Rocky was. He was walking out of the classroom alongside a girl, facing away from me. The girl was named Serena, a junior from my department. "Rocky, I just saw you directly block Haley." I found her annoying. Rocky was as cold and terse as ever. Serena bounced beside him, her ponytail swaying, showing her excitement. "If I follow you to class without your permission, would you find me annoying?" Rocky lazily retorted, "What do you think? I think I'm so cute, kind, and good-natured that you couldn't really hate me." Rocky scoffed, "You're more annoying than her." He probably didn't even notice. When he said that, there was no disgust in his tone as when he mentioned me. After re-adding Rocky on Facebook, I didn't go directly back to the dorm. Instead, I went to the nearly bankrupt stray dog rescue station. The head of the station and 2 volunteers were still at a loss. I excitedly told them about the 50,000 prize we could win in a week. The head of the station hugged me and cried loudly, "Haley, you'll be my savior." I was squeezed so tight I could hardly breathe. Okay. You don't need to save the rest. Anyone who needs to be hospitalized should go." The head's crying suddenly stopped, and she stood straight up. Today, I saw a golden retriever limping in the next neighborhood, and I couldn't bring it back. I need to go find it right now. Saying this, she ran off with the volunteers. On the way back to school, I thought about the ample prize money, feeling delighted, until I passed the playground and saw this scene. Serena was crouching beside Rocky, quietly crying. Why are you back together with her? You clearly said her clinginess was disgusting and that you regretted dating her. Rocky, do you even know I like you? Rocky leaned against the wall, his hands hanging at his sides, casually flicking a lighter, saying nothing. One of the challenge rules established early on was that we weren't allowed to inform anyone unaware that we were pretending to be a couple. Hearing the word clingy, I slightly wrinkled my nose in embarrassment. I was somewhat surprised. I returned after a 10-month leave of absence, and they still weren't together. Serena didn't wait for Rocky's response, she stood up with red eyes. She stared into his eyes. If you say you don't like me at all, I'll never show up in front of you again. A shallow restlessness flickered on Rocky's face. But when Serena turned to leave, he still grabbed her wrist. Don't go. Rocky bent his back, resting his head on the girl's shoulder. His voice was low, sounding emotionally flat. I don't want you to leave. Serena finally managed a small smile. She turned back, stood on her toes, and kissed Rocky's lips. You clearly like me a little. Rocky, I'll wait for you until you're willing to be with me. Rocky raised his hand and pinched her earlobe, but he said nothing. I wrapped my scarf tighter and left silently. The two of them seemed to have sorted things out. Serena likely wouldn't have to wait that long. They should be together in a week. But that didn't really concern me. I just hoped Rocky wouldn't get too caught up in romance and prematurely end the challenge. Not long after returning to the dorm, I received a message from Rocky. Are you asleep? I didn't want to chat with him much, so I casually made an excuse. Just about to sleep. Rocky, I returned a book at the library and just got back. I yawned and didn't call him out. Okay. A few minutes later. Rocky, good night? Saying good morning or good night to each other was a hard rule for cultivating feelings online. That was one of the challenge requirements. I eagerly replied with a good night, ending this torturous conversation. It might have been the first time in 10 months that I saw Rocky again. That night, I dreamed of the day I decided to let go of Rocky. The surge of emotions was overwhelming. I forced myself to stay rational, to avoid doing anything he'd dislike. I cautiously tried to please Rocky. He was no longer as resistant to me as before. He didn't even shoo me away when I sat across from him with my lunch tray. I thought my efforts were gradually paying off. Even if it was slow progress, that was okay. All of our mutual friends knew about Rocky and me. So, when I got stuck on the mountain and called a friend for help, they pushed Rocky to come to my aid. Haley, I asked Rocky to come pick you up. I twisted my ankle and couldn't walk, so I had to sit on a rock waiting for him. When my battery was almost out, I called him, just to ask when he'd arrive. But there was no answer. My phone was dying fast, so I thought I'd save the last bit of power to call a friend or 911. But it shut down unexpectedly. I had no choice but to pick up a stick and hobble my way down the mountain. I stumbled a few more times on the way, my ankle swelling up even more, but I had to keep going. Then, just at the school gate, I ran into Rocky, carrying Serena in his arms. My sleeves and pants were torn by branches, and I was a mess, limping and covered in dirt. A world apart from Serena, who was clean and still smelling like perfume. Maybe I'd been walking too long, because I was just so tired. I could only say in a soft voice, "You could have just told me if you weren't coming." Rocky asked, "So, you just had to wait for me?" I forced a dry smile. He looked me up and down and turned his gaze away, his voice as cold as ever. "Stop putting yourself through this, Haley. It's quite pathetic." A friend of mine, who happened to be passing by, saw the scene, and angrily confronted Rocky. "Didn't you promise to pick up Haley? Didn't I tell you her phone was almost dead? Do you have any idea how dangerous it was for her to be alone on that mountain?" Rocky, unbothered, only held Serena closer, and spoke in an unhurried tone. "Serena twisted her ankle, too. I can only help one person, got it?" With that, he carried Serena to the infirmary. My friend, furious, wanted to argue with him, but I stopped them. In that moment, I suddenly felt like it was pointless. I couldn't blame anyone else. I could only blame myself for not letting go, for putting myself through this. I looked at my friend and sighed, forget it. After that day, I stopped looking for Rocky. Even if I ran into him and Serena on campus, I would calmly look away, not sparing them a second glance. Sometimes, thinking about Rocky still hurt. A deep, suffocating ache. The withdrawal was unbearable, but I really didn't want to try salvaging it again until Serena plagiarized my project topic and most of my PPT and won an award in the competition. I went directly to her advisor and accused Serena of plagiarism. This is my final project. The professor closed the office door, looking at me with a hint of reluctance. Look, how about I make it up to you? It's just a project, after all. It's not like she stole your award. No need to go as far as having her award revoked, right? It turned into a threat by the end. The message was clear: if I dared report Serena, I could forget about ever getting a scholarship for the rest of my university years. I'll give you 3 days to think it over. No rush. I left the office feeling lost. Rocky was already waiting at the building entrance. He quietly took my laptop bag, then took my hand in silence. Where are we going? I asked. Rocky didn't answer, just led me to the artificial lake we used to walk around in the evenings. It was secluded, with almost no one around. Rocky looked down at me, speaking softly. Come here, let me hold you. I didn't move, just looked at him with a blank expression. He chuckled lightly, his gaze lifting slightly. You're clearly about to cry. Why hold back? I tried to walk away, but Rocky pulled me into his arms. Just like before, he placed his hand on the back of my head, gently rubbing. It's okay, now. It had been so long since I'd heard Rocky speak to me this tenderly, so weak-willed. The moment he took the initiative, my heart softened all over again. Tears fell instantly, one after another, dampening the collar of his hoodie. Why is it so hard just to protect my own rights? I cried it all out, finally. Rocky didn't say much, but he held me even tighter. As my emotions settled, I started to pull away from Rocky's embrace. Suddenly, he leaned over and kissed my earlobe lightly. Haley, I won't break up with you anymore. I stared wide-eyed at him, shocked. Rocky wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes, his expression so calm, as if discussing something trivial. You love me. I can agree to get back together. On one condition, don't pursue the plagiarism incident with Serena. It felt like a wad of cotton was stuck in my throat, making it impossible to speak. In the silence, the distant strains of a campus song drifted over the speakers. He's not worth your heartbreak anymore. He pretends to be calm, but he doesn't understand you. Rocky's voice was as icy as ever. It's a fair deal, a deal. He was treating getting back together like a transaction, so Serena could secure her award. I remember crying and cursing Rocky for a long time that day. It's hazy now because I had a high fever afterward and was bedridden for days. My roommate and friends all tried to console me. Why make such a big deal out of it, Haley? Serena's advisor has a strong background. What's the point of going against her? Exactly. Isn't it better to let this slide than to lose all chances at scholarships? While I was recovering, the scholarship results were announced. My name wasn't on the list. Even worse, I was diagnosed with depression, to the extent that I needed medication to manage it. I had no choice but to take a year off from school to recover and readjust. As I dragged my suitcase out the campus gates, I thought, I need to go out and experience things more beautiful than love. This dream ended when my break from school was over. The laziness from a sleepless night peaked when I saw Rocky downstairs. He handed me a cup of soy milk and 2 sugar cakes. I don't have class this morning, so I came to keep you company. I took it with a fake smile. Thanks, but it wasn't necessary. The first class was similar to an elective. Rocky and I sat toward the back. Even though I was drowsy, I couldn't dare to sleep. Rocky propped his head up, looking at me with a slight smile. Why do you always get sleepy in her class? My eyelids were heavy, and I really didn't feel like talking to him. Rocky raised his chin slightly. Just sleep. I'll keep an eye on the teacher for you. This time, I sincerely thanked Rocky. After saying that, I leaned on the desk, sliding my arms forward just a bit. I wanted to ensure that the people in front of me could block my face. Before I finally closed my eyes to sleep, Rocky watched my every move, his brow occasionally lifting as if he were amused. When class ended, I woke up well-rested, stretching my back. I can't believe the teacher didn't notice anything in the entire class. Rocky still rested his head on one hand, using his other hand to tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear. He gazed at me with boredom. Hey, girlfriend, you drooled. I didn't even have time to care about his teasing, and immediately covered my mouth. Finding no wet spot, I froze. Hearing Rocky's short laugh, I realized he had tricked me. I reverted back to my polite, distant demeanor, picked up my book, and headed for the door. Rocky, with his long legs, casually followed beside me. Are you angry? I blankly responded. No. He seemed about to say something else, but was interrupted by a female voice nearby. Rocky. Serena ran up to him with a smile. Aren't you free this morning? Rocky dropped his casual demeanor and didn't answer her. I thought maybe I could finally escape from Rocky. If you have something to discuss, go ahead. I'll be leaving now. I dashed down the stairs without waiting for their response. Being with Rocky was too exhausting. What was worse, I hadn't gotten far when he caught up with me. He looked like he had run into a tricky situation. I and Serena, you don't need to explain. I was puzzled and had to interrupt him. We'll have nothing to do with each other in 6 days. This relationship was never real. It was just for show, and you don't need to tell me about your other girls. We'd better not interfere with each other. Rocky looked at me, saying nothing. I couldn't understand the look in his eyes, so I awkwardly said, "Goodbye." "No worries, I'm going to eat." "You remember to eat?" I tentatively asked, then walked past him alone. That day, Rocky didn't seek me out again. I happily enjoyed my alone time, but these remaining days couldn't be brushed off easily. Tony, the rich guy who initiated the challenge, proposed we spend the weekend at a private equestrian club in the suburbs. But when we got to the hotel, he casually mentioned, "By the way, I forgot to tell you, since you two are now a couple, I booked you a suite. If that's fine, you can check in. If not, you can drop out of the challenge." I thought earning money was tough, but the consolation was that Serena had come along at her own expense. With her there, I wouldn't have to waste too much energy dealing with Rocky. Just as I pushed my suitcase into the room, Rocky stopped me. I turned back, confused. "Serena isn't someone I called here." I nodded and turned around again. Rocky didn't let go of me, which made me uncomfortable. He lowered his gaze, his eyelashes trembling. "You think it's unnecessary, that's your business. Whether I explain is mine. I don't have a habit of cheating. For the rest of these days, I don't plan to just go through the motions. If we're dating, let's do it seriously, or let's end it here." Rocky looked tired as he finished and opened the door to leave. His open shirt flapped in the wind. He walked briskly, as if fleeing from something. I called the station to check on the hospitalized dogs. I stayed until evening, and when Rocky returned to the room, he waited for me to go eat with everyone. After getting ready, I opened the master bedroom door. "Let's go." Rocky leaned against the door frame, his eyes droopy. I paused. "What's wrong?" He still didn't look at me, slightly lifting his lips. "Hold hands." "We can't even hold hands while dating?" I took a deep breath, walked over, and awkwardly took his hand, warning, "Just holding hands, at most." Rocky straightened up from his lazy stance, interlacing our fingers. A slight smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. "Depends on my mood." We didn't hold hands for even 2 minutes before I felt relieved. As soon as I stepped out of the elevator into the lobby, I saw a sleazy man cornering Serena. "Hey, sister, care to explain how I just bumped into you?" "What did I bump you with? Be clear." The oily bald head was as disgusting as his greasy words. Serena looked at Rocky for help, biting her lip tightly. Rocky stared at them, expressionless, his grip on my hand tightening painfully. Serena suddenly smiled faintly, dropping her hands that had been pushing the man away, allowing the bald guy to pull her into his arms. In the next second, Rocky let go of my hand, striding over to pull Serena behind him, landing a fierce punch on the bald guy. The bald guy stumbled, hitting the wall, covering his face and cursing. "Who the hell are you?" Rocky walked towards him, each step filled with undeniable hostility. His shoe landed on the bald guy's face, looking down as he said, "She's my girlfriend. I ask you, where did you just touch her?" I leaned against the front desk, watching with interest alongside the cleaning lady. I hoped Rocky would hit the bald guy harder, so he could end up in reform for 15 days. When he got out, I would collect my money and the challenge would be over. The bald guy clearly had some background, as his 2 bodyguards soon appeared, joining the fight with Rocky. In the end, it was Tony who arrived, introducing Rocky's identity. The bald guy kept apologizing before the matter settled down. Tony and Serena helped Rocky up, demanding to know, "Do you realize you two are dating? Your boyfriend is fighting someone, and you just stand there doing nothing?" I lowered my eyes, diminishing my stance. In a low, disappointed voice, I said, "But my boyfriend is fighting for another girl." I looked down, fiddling with my hands. "And just now, Rocky said himself that he's Serena's boyfriend." Don't provoke Tony. What if he ended up being dissatisfied and deducted my prize money? Ideally, Rocky and I would split the 100,000, each getting 50,000. I thought if Rocky performed poorly, maybe I could get him to lose some money, and it would come to me. After I finished speaking, Tony indeed shot a glare at Rocky, and the latter stared at me without blinking, his eyes dark and inscrutable. Tony and Serena helped Rocky back to the living room of our suite. I took out the medicine box, putting on a show for Tony. Carefully, and holding back my grievances, I applied the medicine to Rocky's arms and face. He watched me closely, yet, I consistently refused to meet his gaze. Serena approached and reached out her hand. "Give me the medicine, I'll take care of Senior Rocky." After all, Senior Rocky got hurt saving me. I nodded internally, but on the surface, I hesitated for a few seconds before expressionlessly handing it to her. Rocky blocked my hand. His words were directed at Serena. "No need. You all can leave now." Before leaving, Serena gazed at him with deep emotion for a long moment. As Tony closed the door, only the two of us remained in the room. I retracted my pretentious demeanor and distanced myself from Rocky, but he pressed my back, pushing me back into his embrace. "Let go of me." I frowned, my voice tinged with obvious displeasure. Rocky was in a bad mood. If I had said that during our previous relationship, he would have let go and left. His deep voice was hoarse. "I'm sorry, Haley, I and Serena." Here it comes again. I lost my patience and spoke frankly. "You two like each other. It's normal for you to stand up for her. What's there to explain? I saw you kiss that night on the playground." Rocky's expression froze, and after a while, he spoke. "It wasn't a kiss. I didn't expect her to kiss me. I didn't react much." "That's your business. It has nothing to do with me." "Rocky, I agreed to participate in this boring challenge for the 50,000 prize. I just want to get through these last few days peacefully. Can't we just go through the motions?" "Get through?" Rocky emphasized that word. "Being with me is so torturous." I pushed his hand away and stood up, brushing off my clothes. "What else? I don't like you. Pretending to be a couple with you is really uncomfortable." Rocky looked blank, staring at the hand I had just pushed away. After stating my point, I returned to my room. Before closing the door, I heard Rocky's quiet voice asking, "Don't you like me anymore?" I knew he found it hard to believe for a moment. After all, he had witnessed my previous desperation, but I couldn't lose myself forever for him. In the first month of dropping out, I wasted time like a shell of a person. One day, I walked to the edge of a bridge. Sitting there in a daze, the stream behind me was shallow enough to see the bottom. I didn't notice when a little yellow dog popped out, tugging at my pant leg, trying to pull me to the road. I pulled my leg back, ignoring it. It barked at me fiercely, then grabbed my pant leg again, dragging me. Annoyed, I had to follow its strength, stepping down from the bridge. "You're so annoying," I said, squatting down to glare at it. At that moment, a girl ran over. That was the first time I met the head of the stray dog rescue station. After scolding the little yellow dog for a while, she apologized to me. The previous owner of this dog committed suicide by jumping into the river. People in their community said that when the dog's owner was retrieved, it was watching nearby. So now, whenever it escapes, it comes here. If it sees someone too close to the bridge, it bites their pants to pull them away from the edge. Many people have kicked it out of frustration. After hearing that, I squatted down again to look into the little yellow dog's eyes. It tilted its head. The light in its bright brown eyes flickered. I thought I found something more beautiful than love. During my recovery, I stayed at the rescue station as a volunteer. Later, the little yellow dog escaped and was captured by a dog meat restaurant. It received a deep cut on its hind leg. By the time it returned, it was on the brink of death. Coincidentally, during that time, we had rescued several dogs that were seriously ill, and the funds were running low. After that, I lost a game and agreed to this week-long game challenge. After opening up with Rocky, our relationship was completely frozen. The next day, I came out of the master bedroom just in time to see him dressed in riding gear, preparing to leave. I casually asked, "I don't know how to ride. Did Tony say I must go?" He had a cold expression, as if he hadn't heard me. He simply walked out the door. I blinked and sighed in relief. This was the best situation. I wouldn't have to endure Rocky anymore. By the stable, I ran into a guy walking an Alaskan Malamute. Unable to resist, I approached him to ask if I could pet the dog. The guy and the Alaskan were both very friendly. We soon played together. After a while, we were tired and went to rest on a bamboo chair under a shed, and Rocky walked over with a helmet in hand. Without even glancing at the guy, he snatched the half-empty water bottle from my hand. After taking a sip, he spoke. "I'm tired. I want to go back to the room to nap." I didn't want the water bottle anymore and nodded coldly. "You can go. Stay with me," Rocky said, his expression unchanged. "I'm scared to sleep alone." I was amused with anger and refused without thinking. "No way. I want to sit here a bit longer." If there hadn't been other people around, I would have thrown that bottle in his face. The guy awkwardly chuckled while petting the Alaskan. "Is he your boyfriend?" Before I could answer, Rocky shot back. "Otherwise? What's not obvious about it?" The Alaskan must have sensed his hostility, growling softly at him. I repeatedly apologized to the guy and ordered him a dessert as compensation. Rocky leaned lazily against the shed above my head, quietly watching me. Seeing I still had no intention of getting up, he simply bent down and picked me up. I advise you not to struggle. He anticipated my movements, casually reminding me. Tony is watching. I clenched my fists tightly, furious. Rocky, what's wrong with you? Put me down. I can walk by myself. He looked ahead, his tired brows carrying a hint of mockery. Isn't it said that you can do anything for money? Haley, hold me now. I'll just cooperate with you for these few days so you can get the money smoothly. I closed my eyes, suppressing my anger, and nodded. I don't want it. I had reached my limit with Rocky. I'd rather take a loan. Put me down. I'm going to tell Tony that I'm giving up. Rocky stopped and looked into my eyes. He smirked lightly, directly carrying me into the elevator. Once in the room, before I could turn on the lights, the moment he set me down, I immediately slapped him. My palm ached painfully. Rocky, are you shameless? The light filtering in through the door shone on his slightly turned face. After a few seconds of silence, Rocky moved his lips. Why do you hate me so much now? Haley, I don't understand. Is it just because I once refused to reconcile? He looked up, his quiet eyes hinting at absurdity. I really didn't like you a year ago. Did I refuse you incorrectly? He appeared genuinely puzzled, completely forgetting about the plagiarism incident. I didn't want to bring that up for now, only saying, when I was chasing you a year ago, you must have found it very annoying, right? He didn't answer, clearly conceding. So did I. I continued, being pestered by you now is the same. I finally understand. Being chased by someone you don't like is truly disgusting. Rocky's face darkened, his hands at his sides turning white from clenching. I didn't stop, staring at him word by word. It's so disgusting that if you touch me, I'll wash my hands 3 times. I wasn't trying to get back at him, nor did I take any pleasure in it. I was simply stating a fact. Being direct was also to force Rocky to give up. With his strong pride, being disliked to this extent wouldn't be something he could tolerate. After a long time, a self-mocking chuckle broke the silence. Rocky said nothing and walked past me, opening the door to leave. I slumped down onto the couch. Without Rocky around, my breathing felt much easier. It was like surfacing after being drowned to the brink. I thought Rocky's sudden departure meant the challenge was over. But the next morning on my way back to school, Tony found me. I've been watching you too. It must be awkward, right? If it weren't for Rocky reminding me, I wouldn't have realized I was disturbing you. There are only 3 days left. Just clock in normally. No need to send me any proof. Rocky wasn't even in it for the 100,000. I nodded, feeling a bit complicated. Because I was. Rocky had disappeared for 2 days. I was relieved not to deal with him, spending most of my free time at the hospital with the dogs. He showed up at a friend's gathering on the 6th night. Upon seeing Tony, he turned his steps away from me. He sat down next to me without any eye contact. Later, Tony got a bit tipsy. When it was my turn for a dare, he pointed at me with his drink, slurring his words. You two have been together for so long, just kiss already. He finished with a hiccup. Rocky, who had been playing with his dice cup, paused slightly at the comment but showed no reaction. It was as if he hadn't heard. Everyone's attention turned to us, teasing. Tony, fearing I'd refuse, quickly added, whoever backs down pays a 5-fold penalty. That means 10 shots. I glanced at the 10 glasses of alcohol in front of me. With a light hum, I picked up a glass, silently accepting the punishment. Tony's face immediately darkened, and the other teasing people looked displeased as well. The atmosphere cooled down. Someone advised, forget it, Tony, we're just joking. 2 shots are enough. Tony shuffled the cards in his hand and shot me a glance. Who said it was a joke? Fair play, let her drink. As I reached my 6th cup, a hand came over and took it away. Rocky downed 4 glasses in quick succession, flipping the cups upside down on the table. His words were directed at Tony. Can't you go a day without bullying someone? Now you're even targeting my girlfriend? Tony shot him a displeased look, frustrated. Who can outdo you? I drank a bit too quickly, feeling the alcohol swirling uncomfortably in my stomach. I got up and ran to the bathroom. I vomited everything I had just drunk. Leaning against the sink, I rinsed my mouth and inadvertently met Rocky's gaze in the mirror. He stood behind me with a faint smile, his eyes hazy with drink. You've never kissed me? Why so resistant? I turned to leave. Haley, he called softly. I keep dreaming about us these days. I dreamt that our first kiss was so clumsy, that I swore I'd marry you when I was drunk, and that you used to love me so much. He looked down, tugging at his lip. Then I dreamt of the last time I saw you last year, when you cried and scolded me for being such a jerk, for treating reconciliation as a transaction. I was really quite inhumane then because all I thought was how loud you were. I didn't feel much at his words. I genuinely couldn't recall the feelings I had for Rocky back when I liked him. I couldn't even empathize with my past self. Rocky tilted his head, quietly watching me. Haley, I never dated Serena. The kiss was only that one time on the playground, just a tiny touch. Rocky must have been drunk, otherwise, he wouldn't be acting so childish. It really was just a little bit, he stressed after biting his lip. Seeing me remain unmoved, his eyes dimmed. Am I already tainted? So that's why you don't want me? I shook my head and told him honestly. When I decided to drop out, I knew I wouldn't want you anymore. No matter how much I liked him, I wouldn't. Rocky nodded slightly, his gaze fixed on the ground. I see. The spotlight above cast a slanted shadow behind him, making him look somewhat lonely. I looked away, not wanting to thank him for his cooperation these past few days and lacking the mood to reminisce or complain. I simply said 2 words to bid farewell. I'm leaving. There was no more sound behind me. On the evening of the 7th day, Tony transferred $100,000 to my PayPal. He seemed reluctant to talk to me and explained everything very dismissively. I broke up with Rocky. The prize is yours now. If I keep sending him money, I'll be the idiot. Before leaving, he warned me repeatedly. Don't let your conscience get the better of you and secretly give him the money. He doesn't deserve a dime from you. Tony yawned and turned to leave, mumbling. I thought you two could keep going. I didn't even care why they broke up. I thanked him and hurried to the shelter, gripping my phone tightly. My feet felt like they were flying, going faster and faster. Soon, I was running toward the sunset, wanting to be there a bit sooner. Before it set, little yellow, I'm coming. Rocky's side story. Rocky was living a messy life. He had grown used to being hospitalized for a perforated stomach from drinking. His roommate stood by the bedside, nagging him. Rocky, can you please calm down? The doctor said if it weren't for timely rescue, you'd die. Rocky interrupted, his pale face lazily indifferent. That would be just fine. Make sure to tell Haley I killed myself because I couldn't handle her dating someone else. Let her remember me forever. Though his roommate recognized his half-joking tone, his face turned beet red. Stop that. Don't say such things. In reality, Rocky had ruined his health. Even if he survived, he'd likely die sooner than others in a few decades. At that moment, Serena barged into the hospital room. Her face was streaked with tears as she slapped Rocky. I've been by your side for an entire year. Is this how you treat me just for Haley? Rocky barely reacted to the slap, not really understanding what she was saying, just raising an eyebrow. His roommate recounted the events. In this year's competition, Serena had reused an old trick, plagiarizing another senior's final project. She thought the teacher would cover for her again, but this time, she encountered a tough opponent. The usually unassuming senior had a terrifying background and reported her to the organizers. The organizers acted swiftly, thoroughly investigating Serena's past participation. Not only was her award revoked, but she also faced disciplinary action. They even publicly announced her plagiarism incidents on social media. Her advisor, too, was also brought in for questioning. Serena believed Rocky had set her up. The 4 drip by the bedside ticked rhythmically. Hearing this, Rocky smirked slightly. Honestly, if you hadn't come in here causing a scene today, I might have forgotten about you. Serena broke down, incoherently lamenting why Rocky was so heartless. She didn't believe in karma, insisting that if it weren't for Rocky, she wouldn't be so unlucky. Later, Rocky's roommate, worried about disturbing his rest, kicked Serena out. The boy in the hospital bed had completely given up on himself. He had no intention of causing trouble for Serena, knowing that if he killed her and then himself, Haley wouldn't even glance his way again. Before he and Tony deliberately fell out, he had asked why Tony agreed to join the game. He didn't want to admit it. Seeing Haley again after 10 months still made his heart skip a beat. When they first broke up, Haley's insistence had made him regret dating her. She was just so loud. Every time class ended, she was right there. Rocky, are you free for lunch? Let me treat you. Rocky stopped, took off his baseball cap, and put it on Haley's head. His tone was harsh and cold. Can you understand human language, Haley? Do you know what a breakup means? The girl was full of energy, a stark contrast to how she had looked just days ago. I know. I'm not here to get back together. I plan to pursue you again. Crazy. Rocky thought blankly. He ultimately didn't go to lunch with Haley, having just accepted Serena's invitation instead. Serena was sweet and quiet. When she looked at him with her sparkling eyes, he thought his ideal type should be like that. But for some reason, he still didn't respond to her subtle confession. Haley had clung to him for so long. Just as he was getting used to it, she seemed to be ready to give up, because he didn't answer her call, because he had chosen to save Serena first. Haley never came looking for him again. Rocky thought this was fine too, but there was a nagging feeling stuck in his chest, uncomfortable. It must be withdrawal symptoms, Rocky thought. When Serena asked for his help in convincing Haley not to report her plagiarism, he felt inexplicably better. Before going to see Haley, Rockey changed his clothes in the dorm. He even tidied his hair in front of the mirror. His roommate teased, "Rockey, you're showing off now." Rockey shot him a sideways glance, uncharacteristically not kicking him. After a long time, he held Haley in his arms again. Rockey lazily thought, "Forget it, if Haley wants to get back together, let her. It's no big deal." He felt like he had regained some of the feelings he used to have for Haley. To save face, Rockey used the plagiarism incident as an excuse to propose getting back together. But the expected outcome didn't arrive. Haley was completely disappointed in him. She hadn't appeared in front of him for a full 10 months. Rockey found it laughable. He didn't understand what Haley was being dramatic about. Serena had plagiarized her assignment but hadn't taken her award. Was there really a need for such a big reaction? For a long time, he didn't think about Haley anymore. He let Serena get close, even overstep. But he never mentioned being together. The moment he reunited with Haley, his heart raced irregularly. He bit his lip, wanting to mock Haley, to come back? But considering not wanting to spoil the mood for others, he said nothing. Throughout the game, he deliberately avoided looking at Haley, maintaining a cold demeanor, appearing unapproachable. No one knew that when Tony proposed the fake couple challenge, he had already decided that Tony was a brother for life. The moment he agreed, he didn't think about anything, not how to deal with the ambiguous Serena, not whether Haley still liked him. He only knew that he was still willing to agree to get back together with Haley. The end. If you like Kitten's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.